Well,
Perfect.
good morning, everyone. Happy to step in and share with you kind of my experience in using Teams. During my day job is really to run the Charlotte and Southeast region for Centric Consulting. We're an IT and management consulting firm, been in existence for over 20 years. So I've been here for the past 5 years, running this office, working very closely with Aparo over that time. I'm just very passionate and committed to their mission. So really any opportunity I get to try to help out, I like to try to take advantage of. So I'm thrilled to be with you here today to share kind of my perspective on more how I use Teams than SharePoint. But just want to encourage you throughout our time today to ask questions, use the chat feature. Really want to try to make this as valuable for you as possible. So again, happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, TJ. Stephanie, introduce yourself to any new folks we might have with us.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephanie Mckee. I am the Director of Technology Engagements with Aparo. And I have been working with SharePoint and Teams, well, probably Teams more recently over the past 3 or 4 months. We kind of got thrown in as through this pandemic and COVID. So I've been learning some fun little tips and tricks that I want to share today, as well as some things in SharePoint. So welcome, glad you guys are here.
Okay, so what we'll do is, Stephanie, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for right now, and we will we'll revert to yours so that you can share your SharePoint slides. So
Okay.
as Stephanie was mentioning, she'll cover a little bit about SharePoint and the tips and tricks and whatnot that we've used. And TJ will focus a little bit on Teams. But one thing we also want to make sure you guys take away from this is there's some integration going on between SharePoint and Teams, and we want to make sure that that's not lost. We can't get deep into that today, but it is an important takeaway because it will help you be more efficient as you work going forward. Okay, so
SharePoint. Yeah, give me just a sec. Get signed in here. My 2-factor authentication.
Yes, our favorite method, right? But
it's awesome. Takes a few extra steps here. Okay, let me share my screen. Share. Okay, are we good there? Can you guys, TJ, Jennifer, see my screen?
We're great. We're great. And guys, let me just point out, thank you for bearing with us as we work through these steps. It's you know, some of these things don't work as quickly as we wish they would. So bear with us on these network issues.
Okay, so something I've learned over just working from home recently is there's different ways to get to your SharePoint, your Teams, your OneDrive, your Outlook within the web browser. So I have started, I realized I could go to www.office.com to kind of get a quick view of a snapshot of all of my apps, access Outlook here, and all of my recent files as well. And of course, I'm going to start having technical difficulty because I'm sharing my screen and I'm trying to demo. Here we go. I was like, where are my apps?
Oh, I know. Yay.
So I don't, you know, a lot of people don't know that you can go directly to office.com because people are used to going to Outlook.office.com or their SharePoint.com to access files. But here it's really easy to see all the apps that you have access to. You can go to Teams within the web browser. It's a shortcut to my SharePoint. And then all the recent files I've been working on, it keeps like a track of all of these. So it's kind of an easy in, easy out type deal, and I found it super useful. It shows all of my recent files. You know, I can pin files, which I don't think I've pinned anything for my favorites. If I scroll down, I can easily access my SharePoint sites here, the ones that I go to most of the time. So I find it super useful, other than going directly to Outlook.com or SharePoint.com. Let's see, what was the next thing on our list here? And also, for those of you that are kind of on the go a lot, like a lot of us, well, we've been home for the past few months, but when you get back out there on your mobile devices and smartphone, like an iPad or your iPhone or Android, there's a SharePoint app that is awesome. And I highly recommend it if you just need to pull up a quick file, if you're having a conversation with someone. It's an easy thing to do, to look at your files on your SharePoint site or your OneDrive too. There's a separate app for OneDrive. I think another thing that's kind of a quick and easy thing to do in SharePoint is, I'm going over to my SharePoint site here, is Microsoft's recently kind of created this modern look that's a little different from the classic SharePoint, which I really like because it keeps track of all of my different main sites. Like, I mainly use client services, and I can see, you know, on the fly, okay, I've been working in these 3 files within the past day or 2, and I can easily access them by just clicking on it. I can make these favorites or bookmark these over to the left by just clicking on the star, which is super useful. If I want to remove one, I just deselect it by clicking on the star again. And let's see, what else? And as far as searching goes, and the search field has moved a little bit when Microsoft's been transitioning from the classic SharePoint to the modern SharePoint. So it used to be over on the right-hand corner, and now you find it at the top. Sometimes I see it on the left side of the window. So if you want to, you know, search for a file, like I'm going to search for, I've been working on maturity model here recently. You know, that gives me all of my options here, and I can just select the file and it comes right up. Voila. Along with searching for files, keep in mind the naming convention for SharePoint. There's SharePoint keeps a database in the back end, and it tracks how you're naming files and creates these searchable database entries. So instead of, when you're naming a file, use underscore or dashes between the names, like Stephanie underscore Mckee. That way it helps create a very efficient search database in the back end. If you leave spaces in your file names, things kind of get jumbled back there, and it's a little harder for SharePoint to search on the correct items. So I'm going to throw that little tip in there. Also want to mention that SharePoint is an internet-based solution. So in order to get the full experience, you do need to be connected to the internet. There is a way that you can sync some of your documents down to your desktop if you want to work offline, but just want to make sure you're aware that since this is a cloud web application, it does require to have internet. You can't run the full thing offline.
Can I just clarify, Stephanie? So that means, for example, if I have some Word files that I and my teammates are working on collaboratively up on SharePoint, but then I'm going to go away for the weekend and I know I'm not going to have a signal. I can download that Word file and I can make my edits or whatever it is I'm going to do while I'm offline. And then I can come back and I can send it back up to my SharePoint site where everybody else can see what I've updated since I was away and offline. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. You can do that. And SharePoint's really good about keeping track of different versions. So, and that's another point that you bring up, Jennifer, too. Whenever, you know, being connected in this collaborative tool, you're able to edit documents with your team members in real time, which is really cool. And you can do it in SharePoint and in Teams because, and we'll show you in a little bit how those connect and talk to each other. So it's really awesome. Like I can be, Jennifer and I can be editing the SharePoint Teams planning session, and she can be typing and I can be typing. And it's taking both of our edits and those kind of merge together. So it's a really, really cool thing.
That's a neat way. That's a perfect example of an increased efficiency, right? But also recognizing, I mean, I think it's cool that they built in the functionality. You know, there are times when we're going to be offline, but we may still need to be able to work. So knowing that I can do that, that's in the main Microsoft tools, right? I can download documents from PowerPoint or Word or Excel, anything else, or are those the main ones?
Yeah, from any of your Office Suite apps, you can do that. And from the, if you're in your SharePoint file and your site and you just need to, you want to sync up just one of your files to your desktop, you can do that. And then when you reconnect, it automatically syncs back up with the cloud.
Cool. And if all that sounded like you're not sure what we were talking about, but you'd like to know more, that's the kind of thing that either TJ or we can help you, you know, figure out if that's something you want to learn more about. But I hope that it's meaningful, the two takeaways. Really, it's meant for you to work online collaboratively, but when there are times you have to be away, you can still download your documents, do what you have to do, and then come back later and update SharePoint. I think is the takeaway there. Awesome. Anything else on SharePoint, Stephanie, that we want to point out?
Well, I think I'm super excited, and a little bit after TJ shares, I think I'm going to share a little bit on how SharePoint, you can integrate it in with Teams, which you can work, you know, mainly just in one application and collaborate with your team members. And so I'm going to show you how that integration works a little later,
Okay.
I believe.
All right. Neat. All right, so let's switch gears then. I don't see any questions coming in, but please feel free to pop a question in Q&A or something in chat, and we'll be more than happy to try to address that. But before we share screens with the whole Teams interface, I'd like to ask you guys just a quick question. Just wondering, if anybody's had a chance to try any features, new or otherwise, since we last had TJ join us and talk a little bit about Teams. I'm just interested if anybody's had a chance to try it out. And if you haven't, no big deal. Oh my word. Hello, yay! This is great. Gosh, I mean, can you tell I didn't expect that? I'm thrilled. Okay, now we're getting a little bit of balance there. Okay, right. So we've had a few that have and a few that haven't. So what's interesting that I want you to take away from today, whether it's SharePoint or Teams, I've got a couple of people that have stepped up and volunteered recently and said, hey, do you have anybody that wants some coaching on Teams? So after you listen to our presentation today, and perhaps refer back to any of the resources that you've had a chance to download from our past sessions, think about that. We've got folks that are out there that are willing to volunteer and help you use Teams. So put those lenses on as we shift gears and let TJ share with us some of the tips that he's got. I'm sharing the results right quick just so you guys can see. We got a 60-40 split there. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna stop that and all right, TJ, here we go. Have you got it?
Yes, looks great.
Cool.
Okay, fantastic. Well, this is really a fairly unstructured presentation. We were talking about it a little bit this morning. It's really just collectively us sharing and talking about some of the tips that we make the most use of when we're using Microsoft Teams. It is such a powerful tool, and you can use it in so many different ways. By no means am I the end-all be-all expert on all the different things Teams can do. So from the perspective of a user, which is really what I am, I thought I would just share with you some of the things I do and the functionality that I've been making the most of so that I can get the most out of this platform. Our organization has about 1,000 people literally around the globe, so Teams is a great platform for us. However, there are times when Teams can be a bit overwhelming, and sometimes you feel like you are almost at the beck and call of Teams. It can remind you of things. It can post up notifications, and sometimes for us, we have to find a way to just shut these things down, especially when we're going to be in a meeting. So one of my favorite commands when I'm getting ready to get into a call or a team chat is I'll come right up here to the search bar. Let me see if it will let me. Oh, I might need to request. Yep, okay. I'm going to request again.
Okay, no worries. There we go.
Okay. So Teams has a large number, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 different command lines that you can enter here. And I'm just going to show you one that I really like. And it's basically do not disturb, just like you can do on your cell phone when you're driving. And when you enter this command, I'm not going to enter it because I'm not sure what I'm going to do to Jennifer's instance here. But when you hit enter, I'll do it because you can make it available. There you go. Your status is set to do not disturb, and it basically mutes all of your notifications, all of your reminders, all the pop-ups that you get intermittently throughout the day. This just puts them on hold, which is a fantastic feature when you're in a meeting. When you want to bring yourself back online, it's a simple thing to type available again. And there you go. So, sometimes we struggle with muting all the different things that might pop up. This is a single way to basically tell Teams, hey, just pause everything for a bit, and then you can make yourself available when you come back. So that's a feature I use quite frequently.
Hey, how do I know what happened while I was on D&D?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jennifer. So while you're on D&D, things that you would typically be notified about will still be bolded. And when you put yourself back available, the notifications that you had queued up will present. So it's really just a pause button for all the great notification features Teams has. It's just a nice way to put all those things on pause.
Right. So they're still going to come to me. I'm not going to have to go hunt them down. I'm just
correct.
Then I need to hold on.
No, that's right. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So that's a feature I use quite often. Some of the more fun things we do, because we can all kind of get overwhelmed with video calls and conferences that many of us are forced to do given the work environment today, is we use some of these fun features here at the bottom to add different things to our message. And actually, Jennifer, I don't think I'm going to be able to do the praise thing because of the Zoom menu bar.
Okay, let me, whoops.
Do you mind doing that real quick? Or maybe
I didn't mean to click on that, sorry.
That's okay.
All right, let's see if I can, were you trying to get praise?
Yes, I was going to talk about the praise.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, if you, yeah, that's okay. Let's go back to a message.
Okay.
Just on a chat. And go ahead and down there, I'll bring up my instance. Or can you just minimize your screen a little bit? That might help.
Okay, sure. Let's see if it'll let me exit full screen. I don't know if it'll let me exit full screen while we're sharing.
Okay. Well, I can walk you through. If you just type a quick message there,
Okay.
I'll walk you through. I'll pull up my Teams instance over here and tell you what you need to press. So after you type in your little message, if you hit the light bulb icon underneath that message bar,
Okay. Got
that
it.
will give you the praise option. There it comes. So this is just a nice way to add a little visual or a little eye candy to a call out to one of your team members. You can add the personalized note. You get a nice little chance to preview it before you actually send it. So these are some fun things we do. Our IT team has come up with some tailored messages for us, like user error. When someone misuses Teams, we'll send a little user error icon to get a laugh about that.
That's funny.
So there's lots of different things you can do with these praise buttons. They just add a little levity to your day-to-day interactions on Teams. So that's a quick and easy one.
Hey,
So you are a
TJ.
TJ. Sorry.
Go ahead, Stephanie. Yeah. Yay! Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, that sort of makes me excited that, so you are able to add like custom little badges in there to fit what you, that's really cool.
Can you use your own images, or do they have like a library of icons, or can you put your own?
You can put your own in there. It's more of an administrator thing because you actually have to move an image to the Teams install on the administrator side. But you can absolutely add your own images there.
And we had a question come in from the audience, and the question is, how do I find those praise buttons again? so yeah, and that was really the question I was going to ask you, was like, hey, is that praise icon available by default, or do you have to add the app? So yeah, address that. Can y'all can y'all see me pointing at the light bulb, the praise button?
Almost. That was close. A little bit smaller, at least for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the audience can see, but I'm pointing to it, so you can describe, TJ, how that happens, how you get to it.
Awesome. So that's a fun feature. One of the things that folks often overlook on Teams, because it's got such a different, okay, great, everyone can see, that's awesome. Because Teams has so many different aspects of its user interface, you can type messages below, you've got the search bar up above, you've got your different types of entries over here. Oftentimes people forget about these two little arrows up here in the top. And again, I've got zoom controls, so I don't want to hit them. But these are just forward and back buttons, just like you use in your browser. And they're really, really useful if you're jumping between different conversations or files, maybe. It's sometimes much easier to navigate with one click by using the forward or back button than it is to jump between a team or a chat. So those are just two handy buttons that I often use. So great, another feature, and I use this one quite often too, because again, I'm in a lot of different conversations. I'm involved in a lot of different client projects, probably just like you all. If there's something that I want to not lose track of, whether that's a chat or it's a document or anything that's just here in the body of a team or a chat exchange or a channel exchange, I'm able to bookmark that. So I think we actually, I'm trying to see if I can do that here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think I need to be in a channel. I don't think it'll work in a chat. I think.
Let's see.
Let's see.
Hold on. I'm not sure if we're both moving the mouse at the same time.
Okay, you go ahead.
All right, let me see if I can grab it right here. Well, it's a bookmark icon, but it says save this message. Is it the same?
That's it. Yep, same thing.
Okay, so I just clicked, I bookmarked that message.
Perfect. Great. And what this does is it basically saves a copy of this message to an area in Teams that you can directly access by going back up to your command bar and typing the word saved. I can type, there we go. And now this will pull up the list of everything that you have identified as being saved. So here's the one that Jennifer just recently saved. So it's chronological order. So again, that's really a nice feature, especially if you read something and it's not something you can deal with right away, but you know it's important and you need to come back to it. This is an easy way to make a copy of it. Again, it doesn't move it. The historic exchange in your chat remains there, and that's an important thing. This is simply a copy, so you can come back and find it using that hashtag save.
That really appeals to me because some of our discussions, I mean, you know, with it being persistent chat, you can scroll forever and ever and ever, and it can be really hard to find that one thing. I mean, you can search for it, right? There are other ways to get to it, but this is a cool way when you have really long threads to find something specific.
Absolutely right. Yeah, yeah. It's invaluable, especially for chats that are somewhat perpetual. Like, I don't know if your organizations have maybe an IT support chat or, you know, some other kind of chat. Maybe it's a news or marketing chat, right? Something where it's just updated continuously. This is a great way to just highlight a little component of that perpetual chat and keep it off to the side. So Jennifer, please jump in if there's anything that you'd like to share with the team or the attendees. I'm going to keep going. There's a couple more that I wanted to touch on, but feel free to jump in anytime.
You know I will.
Okay. I always feel like I'm talking too much. So another kind of something that we've experienced with Teams that as we help other clients implement Teams, it seems to be a pretty common problem. And that is just an overabundance of actual teams and or channels. For my firm, for example, we have a team for every client. And I know some nonprofits have established a team for every donor, or, you know, they have hundreds and hundreds of teams that they're trying to manage. And that's a hard thing to do, even with the powerful search feature that you have up here that I'm assuming most people know. You can just type in, you know, the name there, and that will help you find the team. There are some teams, at least for me, that I'm accessing every day or every other day. And I don't want to be searching for them and wading through the search results. So there's a really great feature in Teams that allows you to pin teams as a favorite. So am I on a team here? Yes, here's a team. And of course, the pin thing. Oh, that's right, you have to do it at the channel level. That's right. So we can pin channels to the top of your left navigation by doing that. So now it tells me the name of the team, right? It's under the programs team, and it's the general channel. And now as I scroll, you'll see that should stay at the top of my teams. I can scroll down to see other teams, but every time I come back up to the top of my list, these are pinned at the top. So it's easy access, but it is important to note it's at the channel level, not the team level. So if I wanted to pin this to the top of my bar as well, you'll see them listed separately, which is a little confusing, but that's the way Microsoft Teams does it right now. So it's at the channel level. To unpin them, say you're done with them, say like for me, a client engagement ends and it's not active anymore, it's a very easy thing to come in and unpin them, and then they're no longer pinned at the top.
So that's kind of nifty. If you have, like you said, hundreds and hundreds of teams, but you rotate through who you're working with, it's kind of cool to force it to the top of your list so you're not searching and scrolling at it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
Exactly. Okay, so let's see. Oh, this is a really common one. And Jennifer, actually, this is, you deserve credit for calling this one out. So a really good best practice to get into when you're using the chat feature is to name your chats. Otherwise, you'll find that you're just, again, building these perpetual exchanges with people, and you're covering a lot of different topics. And sometimes it might be hard if you're not using that bookmark feature. It might be hard to find the topic that you guys were chatting about. So when you go to do a new chat, if you take this really quick extra step, when you do this, to enter the name of the chat right here, the group name of the chat. So I don't know if you saw how I got there through navigation. I can hit it again real quick. But typically when you say, give me a new chat, it simply just asks you, who do you want to chat with? I'm like, you go back like that. Yes. So this is typically what you get, right? Who do you want to chat with? If you hit this arrow key on the right, it does allow you to enter a name for that chat, and that name becomes searchable. And that's really helpful. If you're talking to someone about, you know, a specific topic, that will now appear in your search results, even when you search on their name. So if I wanted to create a chat, I'm not going to do it in your instance, but if I wanted to call the chat name webinar, and I wanted to chat here with Jennifer, later on, when I come up to the search bar and I just enter Jennifer's name, that chat name is going to appear in my search results. So if I'm always naming my chats, I can come into that search bar and say, okay, I talked to Jennifer about a webinar. I talked to Jennifer about this donor. I talked to Jennifer about this outstanding receivable maybe. But I'll have all those organized by chat topic. And it really just helps you hone in on that conversation without, again, building that ongoing perpetual chat that becomes a catch-all. Does that make sense?
Can I add something onto that, TJ?
Please.
When you create your Teams meetings as well, and you hold a Teams meeting, those names are also tracked. So you can go back and reference the chat or the files that went on within that Teams meeting. So if you look over under chat on Jennifer's screen, there's one called a PARO inquiry about halfway down. That's a call that TJ, Jennifer, and I had yesterday to talk about this webinar. And we had some chat stuff in there. And so I've noticed that to be really helpful to me, referencing back to meetings I've had, because we do a lot of Teams video calls, and we're usually throwing in chat stuff in the chat window.
Mm-hmm.
We can click on that if you want to display it. So see
Mm-hmm.
those are the assets that Stephanie was referring to, that it tracks for you basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. So, and there's a few other quick features I think I'll touch on, and then we can maybe get into a little more advanced things like connectors and plugins, which are a little more, they're just a little more complicated. And honestly, I make a little more limited use of those than just working directly in Teams. So I'll just hit on a couple more kind of work directly in Teams features that I think are really neat. So as I think Stephanie mentioned earlier, you know, I typically spend a lot of time flipping between email. I spend a ton of time in Outlook and a fair amount of time in Teams. And sometimes it can get a little frustrating to have to keep flipping back and forth to a conversation that's going on in Teams. And then I'm emailing someone who's actually in that group about something else. So there's actually a really neat way to make email appear in Teams. And this is a feature I've used before when I'm just cranking around through email and I think about something that makes sense to be sent to a team. So it's pretty easy to do, and you can do that by clicking on a channel underneath a team, and there's an option here called Get Email Address. And when you click on that, it gives you a simple email address that you can copy and paste, and you can use that in Outlook. And once you use it once, then it's easy to find in your Outlook, of course. And then when you send an email here, it absolutely appears just like a text does in the channel setting. So it's a really easy way to send an email to everyone that's a member of a channel directly from Outlook. So that's a really cool feature.
And so TJ, just to be clear, if I was in Outlook and I just happened to go and I wanted to search my sent folder for whatever, I would see a copy of that in Outlook as well as within my chat window in Teams. So I see it in both places.
So are you asking as the sender, Jennifer? Or as the
Or the
recipient?
recipient, either one. Like what I'm trying to get at is, will that message live in both Teams and Outlook?
It doesn't get sent, to my knowledge, it doesn't get sent to the team member's Outlook email account. I've actually never asked anyone if it does, but I don't think it does. I think it just gets sent to the team channel for display on the team. Now, what you can do is you can combine some really neat features, which we'll talk about in a moment, to make sure that individuals are notified. So you can use the mention feature, right? So if I wanted to, let me make sure I'm in the chat first before I do this. So another way to get people's attention, which I think we just saw in this chat, can I click on this? I just did, so. I don't want to create an entry here, but if I wanted to make sure Jennifer saw this, we can use this feature, right? Which we call the mention feature. And Jennifer, your name, I can't see on the drop down anymore, so it might have gone away.
It's not finding me. Let's find Levon.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll find her. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, you
So
got
if I wanted to, send a message in a chat or in a channel post or anything, and I just wanted to make sure Levon knew about this, by using that mention symbol, Levon will get a special notification in her activity, which is up here on the top left, that she got mentioned in a message. You can do that in the Outlook email that then gets posted to the teams. So that person will actually be notified that way that they got mentioned in a Teams post, if that makes sense.
it does. You know what? I bet you the reason I don't show up is because I'm the one logged into this Teams.
You're right. That's right.
I bet I can't mention myself.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Hard to send it to yourself.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate you going into detail around that question.
Absolutely. And again, depending on how much volume you have with Teams, if you're just absolutely inundated with messages, this is also something you can do up in the search bar, is to search on your mentions. And this will, again, I always forget, I think it's just mention. Yep. So if you search on this, for example, this should pull up all that @ symbol with your name, just like that. So that's a cool way to do it as well.
That's a neat shortcut.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. So great. Okay, those are some really nifty tips, just to sort of help us make better use of Teams. And one of the things we were talking about a little bit earlier was how Teams and SharePoint kind of integrate. And also it speaks to TJ, the thing you were mentioning a minute ago, like, there are these things called connectors, which is, another example of integration with other tools. But let's segue into the SharePoint and Teams integration first, and then we'll roll along from there. I'm keeping my eye on the clock. And so let me just say to our audience, when we had booked Jeff, we only had 45 minutes available. So we can run to the top of the hour. If you'd like to hang out, that's great. But we're mindful of your time. Please feel free to drop off at 11:45 if you want. But we're going to get a little bit deeper and give you a little bit more detail before we adjourn for today. With that, Stephanie, I'll turn it back over to you, and let's show folks a little bit about what we were mentioning relative to SharePoint and Teams integrating.
Okay, I'll share my Teams screen right quick. Let's see. Let's stop sharing on your end.
Okay. It should stop. There we go.
Okay, and you can see my screen. So I was talking earlier about how you can access your SharePoint documents within Teams. And then if you're having a team meeting, you can collaborate on those together. So I find it to be a very useful and just really cool feature. So if I want to add one of my frequent SharePoint sites I go to, I'm going to add it to my, let's see. I'll go down to the channel. You have to go to the channel level. And then up on the menu bar, if you click the plus sign, you'll get some drop downs here. And there's a ton of different apps that you can integrate into Teams. But I'm going to share Document Library for SharePoint. And then these are my different SharePoint sites that I can access. A part of SharePoint's the main site, so that'll give me access to everything we have. But I think I just want our to add our marketing site, so I can access marketing. And here's a checkbox that'll post to the channel about this tab, so you can let everybody that's part of that channel, you can let them know that that's there. I'm going to uncheck this, so, and then click next. And I want the documents library. That's where all my documents are stored under marketing. And then I click next. And then you can name it. I'll just name it marketing docs. And then this is where it's pulling from. And I'm going to click save. And then this is what all of our subfolders that are in our SharePoint marketing site. So it's easy access for us just to go in here and pull up files within Teams.
So that's really like a window into all the stuff you had already set up on SharePoint, but you're just making a shortcut way for us to get to it, right?
Yeah, it's just connecting the two together so you don't have to switch and flip-flop back and forth.
That's so, and if I, and so anything I do right here on any of these documents, it automatically saves to my SharePoint. I don't have to worry about whether I'm working on the latest version or anything like that.
Yep, yep.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really, really cool feature.
That's another great example of how to save time. So I don't have to toggle back and forth between screens and all that kind of stuff when I'm trying to get at, and then, yeah, and it saves me from having to find the stuff on SharePoint separately anyway. It's all right here. That's a great tip.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I'm trying to change my processes to start really, as you say, Jennifer, save time and be more efficient, because I'm in Teams so much these days.
Yeah. Yes.
And you are too.
Yes. Team and Zoom. Take your pick.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool then. Another question, if I am working in, like, I don't know, let's say I'm working in Word on my desktop or whatever, and it has to do with this particular team and our activities, can I save my stuff to SharePoint vicariously, I guess, by saving right here? Like, do I have to?
Yeah, you can just, there's a handy upload button here. So if you're working on something locally, you just click on upload and it will open up your file folder and you can just browse to where you want to save it.
That's so cool. So really, this is a good example of how Teams is trying to give us sort of a singular workspace for all our digital stuff to try to help us not to have to go to all the different places, I guess, behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's kind of, they're creating like a one-stop shop.
That's cool. That's cool. Let's see. I think we just had a question come in about this. Okay. If you upload a document, does it maintain its format?
Yes, it'll be in the exact same format, whether it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint. It's just basically making a copy of that file up in the cloud in your SharePoint or your OneDrive site.
That's absolutely right. One thing I'll chime in, we've seen examples where, especially in PowerPoint and Word, if you display it in Teams or your browser, you may see some formatting differences just because the browser displays things differently than the native Word application. or PowerPoint, but you're absolutely right. It's maintained the original formatting. Just sometimes when you see it in the browser, it looks a little different.
Yeah, good point, TJ.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that goes along with just being an awareness of the applications and how they work in SharePoint. Generally speaking, like you can edit stuff right inside of SharePoint, and it'll let you edit in PowerPoint or Excel or whatever, but it doesn't have all the same features, does it, as if I'm using the desktop version. So I'm seeing something that is a little, you know, it might look a little wonky in the browser, and I might not have all the same tools available to me when I'm trying to edit in the browser from SharePoint versus straight in the application, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I find myself, when I need to do quick edits or changes to like an Excel document, I just use the Excel web app in the browser because it's pretty much real time. I can put in my numbers really quickly, and it's automatically being saved as soon as I press enter. You know, working in your local desktop office, you know, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it's always periodically syncing back up to your SharePoint or your OneDrive site. But I usually, one of my best practices, I always want to click on that little save button, and it probably could just be habit, even though I know it's syncing in real time. But if for some reason my internet bounced, it's just a little extra precaution. I guess that's when it, like being paranoid or something, that all my changes aren't getting up there.
No, it's good advice, because it's really not a question of if technology is going to fail. It's more a question of when it's going to fail. So yeah, I mean, it's better safe than sorry. So
yeah.
So anything else that you had on your mind, Stephanie, relative to sort of the integration piece between SharePoint and Teams?
I was trying to think. That's one of the key tools I have found that I find really helpful. That's helped save me a lot of time. As far as SharePoint and Teams goes and working in it. I can't think of anything else related to the SharePoint. And I don't know, are we going to touch a little bit on like the other apps?
Yeah, I was
what we had
say,
talked about.
That's what I was going to say. Let's segue over to that. If that was the key point we wanted to make on the SharePoint thing, like I think the connectors piece is a good thing for us to touch on so that people can at least have a basic understanding of those connectors, even if we don't actually, you know, go into all of them today. All right. Okay. So TJ, I'm going to share my screen with you again.
Great.
And maybe we can just have a quick little look-see at what we're talking about with connectors and you know, the caveat emptor statement that goes along with that.
Right. Absolutely. So as we were preparing for this morning, oh, I've got a request again. Sorry.
Oh, right.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, you know, as we talked about this morning, there's a myriad of different apps and really neat plugins that you can use here inside of Teams. Jennifer was actually telling me about this one this morning or yesterday, where apparently you can integrate your email right into your Microsoft Teams, you know, window or view. That sounds really helpful for someone like me who spends a ton of time in email. I just haven't had a chance to investigate it. So, and that's a great example of the different applications and their availability that Microsoft is constantly adding to this. So, you know, this is something that's always evolving, and it's just really something that we have to keep on top of by reading the latest news and what Microsoft is doing to make new functionality available. So one of the areas I think we wanted to touch on was connectors, right?
Yes.
So if we come here, and I always forget if it's here or if it's down below.
Yeah, I can't remember. Let's look there. Yeah, here we go. There it is.
So these are just an example of all the different apps that you can add to that plus sign that Stephanie used to add her SharePoint view back to a team. So again, real quick, we come back here and we wanted to add something by using this plus sign. These are all the different things that you can do to create a different tab on your team. I'll use this as a quick call out. This is something I use often with my teams. It's a very simple online poll that you can create. Hey, do we want Italian or Chinese for lunch today? You can create a poll in 5 seconds, right? And send it out to your team, let them vote, and you see the response in real time. So that's something we use often. And there's a ton of other apps that are here. We did want to touch on connectors though, and this is a really powerful tool that basically allows you to create a point-to-point integration between your Microsoft Teams and a myriad of other locations, right, or other applications. So it supports RSS, which, as you know, many news channels and other outlets provide RSS feeds. You can add an RSS plugin directly into a channel by leveraging this application and this connector. They used to have connectors for Twitter and for Facebook. We were talking this morning, it seems like those connectors have been retired by Microsoft based on what we were reading. So again, these things are constantly evolving and changing. So I'd encourage you to come out here and look at all the different options they have. But there's really so many different pieces of functionality available. You can really customize your teams and make it a time saver just by looking at these pre-available connectors. I'll quickly call out Trello if that's something some of you use. That's another tool we often use both for agile software development projects and just project management. But this will allow you to make a direct connection to your Trello application, and you'll be able to access it directly within Teams. It's really powerful.
That is so nifty. And two, when you talk about these connectors, can't you set it up such that they will ping you whatever criteria you set up? So let's say, like I see the Salesforce connector down there. So let's say, for example, can I tell it that I want it to shoot me a notification in Teams every time somebody updates a certain account record or something like that? I don't know. Is that
yeah, that's a good question.
Work?
Yeah, I honestly am not familiar enough with the connectors to tell you whether you can put filters on them like that. That's a really good question. I would imagine you can, but I don't know for sure. It's a really good question.
Gotcha. So, but the takeaway is really, again, it goes back to what Stephanie was showing us with SharePoint. It's kind of like we use Teams as kind of an umbrella to get at all these different areas of work that we're engaged with and kind of bringing the tools up under one hood.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I think that really is the power. And then the power of collaboration, which we quickly touched on, but we have many people in our company who are responsible for reviewing and editing documents at the same time. And the fact that you can do that in real time, either on the Teams app or by downloading it to your desktop, and you can see the changes that are being made by your teammates, that's a really powerful feature. And that's something that we use Teams for every day.
Gotcha. Well, guys, we are approaching the top of the hour here, keeping an eye on the clock, and want to make sure that I try to make it a rule never to get between people and their lunch or dinner or anything else for that matter. So I'd like to make sure that we honor the noon hour. But let me just give each of you an opportunity. Is there any other tip that a hot tip we really should get into the mix before we close? Give you an opportunity for any last minute thing?
I don't think so, Jennifer. We covered a lot of exciting things today.
Yeah, we did. We got through a lot more than I thought we would.
Yeah.
This is good. Okay, great. So with that, guys, thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you tuning in and trying to glean some good information that you can use. Our goal is to give you tips and tricks that you can apply right away. And if anything we talked about today just didn't make sense, or maybe you're curious about more, reach out to us. That's what Aparo is here for. We'll be happy to try to help, you know, articulate what it is you're after. TJ, thank you so much. We really appreciate you jumping in with us and sharing your expertise. And of course, Stephanie, as always, our steady Eddie at Aparo. We couldn't without her.
It's always fun, Jennifer.
It is. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, TJ. Thank you, Jennifer.
You got it, guys. Thanks so much. And with that, I'm going to thank everyone for your time today, and we're going to log off the air. Be sure to look for resources tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.